Welcome in lacrosse fans to the Utah Lacrosse Report podcast. I'm your host, Tim Haslam. My guest today is a familiar name to anyone who's been around Utah lacrosse for a while, and one of the few returning guests we've had on the podcast so far. He started coaching at Alta back in the early 2000s, has stops at Brighton and UVU along the way, won multiple state championships, and now finds himself back where it all began, leading Alta through one of its best seasons in years. We're going to talk about his coaching journey, building culture, giving back to the game, Alta's run this season, and that recent trip to Maryland that gave his group a ton to build on. So with that, I'm excited to welcome back to the podcast, Alta head coach, Brandon Horoba. This episode is brought to you by Vessel Kitchen. From practice to game day, fuel matters. At Vessel Kitchen, everything is made from scratch with clean, high-quality ingredients, so you can recover faster and play harder. Eat well, do well. Welcome to the show, Coach. How are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for joining the podcast. I think you're one of the few returning guests to the podcast so far. I mean, obviously, as time goes on, that'll change, but want to thank you for coming back onto the podcast. When we first spoke a couple years ago, we kind of dived into your history, talked about when you started coaching, all the way back in 2002 is when you started coaching at Alta. You've had a couple other stops along the way, but pretty much been in this for almost 25 years, Coach. Is that crazy to think about?
Yeah, that's mind-boggling when I think about it. Just a long time to be around it. Lots of friends and lots of competitions and lots of things that have come from it, and just appreciative of my time doing it. That's for sure. But yeah, it's crazy to think about 25 years.
And again, you started at Alta. You had mentioned you married into the Haas family, which
Yeah.
the Haas family, if you don't know, is one of the original sort of lacrosse families in the state. Big influences early on, especially in that Alta area.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, my brother-in-laws all got the Alta program started back in the mid 90s, and my brother-in-law was a head coach up until he left for Virginia back in the early 2000s, and he brought me on when I married my wife Shanna, and been coaching lacrosse ever since. Had to turn my back on the first love of soccer, but it's been great. And now, truthfully, lacrosse is that first love and passion now, obviously.
And I'm sure that passion, that love keeps you going. All these years. I tell anyone I can, I admire coaches because coaching's a grind, and it wasn't for me. That's why I turned to the media side, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is a grind, and it's a lot of fun though. Getting to see these young men develop and grow. It's crazy to think about some of the kids, that are coaching with me that I coached back when they were, 15, 16 years old, that have been coaching with me. Jake Arbin, Greg Sergakis, and then, guys that I've coached, or, teams that played against other coaches that are now coaching. It's just really fun to see those guys out giving back to the sport, for sure.
And that's what we need, to be honest with you, Coach. People are always asking, how does the sport grow, this or that? Obviously, the more players who graduate and then give back, whether that's coaching or officiating, the better our sport will be moving forward. To your point, a lot of, we'll go to different games and you see a lot of kids on the sideline like, oh, wait a minute, you played at such and such school 10 years ago. It's good to see you back. And that's an important step in our growth for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see those guys giving back and getting involved on the coaching side or officiating in the game. It's fun to see some of the officials when it's somebody that, played several years ago, and now they're giving back by officiating. So it's good to see that, and them wanting to help grow the game as well.
Absolutely. I've always told people I get excited when I meet new coaches or new refs who I don't know, because that is a sign of growth. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
It's good to see those new faces for sure. In 2009, you transition. You go over to Brighton. You were there for 7 years. You win 4 state championships, 3 as a head coach, 1 as an assistant.
Yeah.
Talk about those years. Those Brighton teams were probably some of the better teams that the state has seen.
Yeah, I mean, the talent that was playing back then at Brighton was just phenomenal. I mean, we had so many crossover athletes that were, football kids first, and, got brought in by various coaches to play lacrosse, and just, we had just a talent pool, just phenomenal athletes, and they just made the most of their athletic abilities, and had the opportunity to coach all the Fairman boys at Brighton, and coached my oldest son there at Brighton, Jaden, and we had some really good success. And those are some of the kids. I mean, I still talk to so many of those kids that graduated back in 2011, 2012, 13, 14. I still talk to so many of those kids, and truthfully, those are the relationships that make coaching exciting. Is being able to, 10 years, 15 years down the road, be able to talk to them, attend weddings, uh, see them just grow and develop into adults is pretty astounding. And knowing that most of those kids back on those teams are now into their 30s is really scary.
That's true. That's true. That's funny. You mentioned the Fairman brothers. Obviously, for those who don't know, Bubba was the youngest Fairman. His older brothers, Eli and Luke. They were, very good players in their own right. Eli went on, or let's see, did they both go on to play at Westminster?
No, just Eli went on to play at
Right.
Westminster, and I think Luke did a stint at Onondaga for a year, and then he came home and got into the working ranks, and then Bubba obviously went into Maryland and then on to the PLL for a few years.
Absolutely, and it's fun seeing them. I actually saw Jay Fairman at a game recently. Speaking of seeing old friends, it was good to see him, catch up with him.
Yeah, that's
Those
great.
those teams were fun, and that's when Brighton had grass, a grass field,
Yep, yep.
which was also fun to play on. I remember there being a state championship there, and it was just a beautiful surface.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we unfortunately, I think the first year we got to play on that for the state championship, we lost in the semifinals and didn't get to play on the field. And it was rough having to go there and work and host the state championship knowing you weren't playing in it. It wasn't very fun. So, but yeah, back in the old grass days, and something about fresh cut grass and new painted lines was pretty awesome. But I guess everybody likes these smooth surface turf now instead of little bumps and stuff.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I remember so that championship game I believe was Alta and Juan Diego.
It was, yeah.
Um, and then they at the time it was the Utah Lacrosse Association, and they had a giant seal for their logo, and they would paint
Yes.
it in the midfield, just this big logo. It looked really cool. Those were
Yes,
those
it
were always
did. It
fun.
was great. Yeah.
Um, I remember calling that game for the broadcast, and I think I did it with Walker Bateman. But right next to me was Bowler Jack because he was doing the PA announcing because his kids
Yes.
all
Yep.
went to
Because those
Brighton.
kids yep, they were Brighton kids. Yep.
Yeah, so fun memories from those games. Again, unfortunate Brighton wasn't in it, but
Yep.
Alta taking on Juan Diego. Fun times. You finish your stint at Brighton. You end up at UVU for a year, and then in 2018, you go back to Alta where it all began.
Yep.
Talk about like the last 6, 7, 8 years here at Alta, and the progression that you've seen.
Yeah. So, came into Alta in 2018. It was right after Mike Isbell had decided to hang up the coaching whistle at Alta, and took over for him. We were a young program. My first year, I think we started 7 freshmen on the team. We had just a really young group, not a lot of returning, just a couple of returning guys. I think we had 2 juniors that started for us. But no seniors were in the starting lineup my first year, and just a young group that we didn't have success in the first couple of years. We struggled. We got hammered by the good teams, and we struggled. But those guys, man, to their credit, they just kept fighting and kept grinding. I was really sad because the first group that I came in with, they went into we were going into the 2020 season and had some early success, doing really well, and then obviously that season got cut short with the COVID, and then they came back in 2021. the second year of sanctioning. And that was still kind of when they were doing the A, B, and C thing. And we finished in the B bracket through the course of the year and ended up winning a B division championship. And, truthfully, that group of freshmen that started in 2018 with me helped really kind of bolster Alta lacrosse and, get people excited about it. We had a lot of them recruit some of their friends. We had a kid who had never played lacrosse before come in and play. He was a starting goalie for us in, I want to say it was 2022 season. Was a starting goalie that had never played, but their friend brought him out and just did really well for us in 2022 after we'd won the 21 season. And then, we had some pretty good. We've had good success getting to the state semifinals a few times over the last couple of years, but haven't been able to break over that hump and get into that state championship, which is obviously something we shoot for year in and year out now.
Yeah, and you talk about this year's team. You're sitting at 10-2, number 2 in the 5A RPI as of today. Today's Tuesday when we're recording this. Obviously, that RPI changes daily, which is fun for me to look at.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah, it's fun to watch it.
it is. It's cool to see it. We have on the site, UtahLaxReport.com, we have a little visualization tool that shows teams going up and down. But you're sitting at 10-2. The two losses to Park City and Corner Canyon, obviously household lacrosse names. So no, maybe not no surprises there. You start off the season 3 good wins: Bingham, Salem Hills, Westfield. You then traveled to Park City, lost 9-3. I'm confident to say that game would probably be a different scoreline if you guys played today. And at that point, Coach, the fans, the people, they're looking at Alta going, okay, that's expected, right? We're still not sure maybe who this team is. 2 days later, though, you go and beat Judge, by 3. You beat up on Westlake and Wasatch. You get to a game against Corner Canyon, lose in overtime. And so I think from my point of view, I'm sitting there going, okay, this Alta team, I think they're for real. I think that they're in a good spot. Then you go to Maryland, and I want to talk a lot about Maryland, but
Yeah.
you go to Maryland, you beat Manchester Valley and Hereford. I think I'm saying that right.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. I think so.
and then again, we'll come back to the Maryland trip. But then you come home, you beat Brighton by a goal, and then you beat East last week. And so, Coach, you're sitting here on a 4-game win streak, 10-2, number 2 in the RPI. Did you expect this kind of success at this point in the season?
Truthfully, yeah, I thought we would, I knew that we were kind of flying under the radar as the season goes, and you hear people talking about programs that are going to be competing for state championships. Alta probably wasn't in that initial discussion. I think we probably are now. And after, we do a champions challenge where we play like 5-on-5 inside our little field house that we have, and just saw some good skill coming out of that. And then into January, we go a couple days a week where we do just strictly skill stuff, right? Where we're doing stick skills and offensive stuff and stick skills and defensive stuff. And we were feeling as a coaching staff like, hey, we're going to be a pretty good team. We've got a lot of talent here. We've got a lot of good kids. We've got a strong core of seniors that lead us. And we've got a good group of juniors that are, just continuing to progress every day, truthfully, just getting better and better. And so we knew that we could be really good this year, and we knew that we'd have the opportunity, to win some games that people didn't think we, were going to be able to win. And, I think we've done that and probably surprised some people with some of our play. But yeah, as a coaching staff, we were really confident coming into this year that we could be a pretty good team and definitely competing for the state championship when all's said and done.
And I think you've got your spot. You've got your team in that spot for sure. The 5A race is probably the most compelling it's been since sanctioning.
Oh yeah.
You could go from number 1 all the way down to even, as I'm looking at it here, maybe like 8 or 9. Judge is sitting at 9. We all know Judge has a ton of talent. Wasatch, I love their face-off unit and their defense. Like you look at some of these teams and you go, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see any of these guys in the semifinals.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And on, and on any given day, it's something where it's like, one team could just have a great day that day, and the other team maybe is off just a little bit, and that's all it takes. I mean, there's not a huge window or gap between, the top teams and, like you were saying, that 8 or 9 area, because the margin is so close. There's going to be some really good games, and to your point, there could be some teams that end up in the semifinals or even championship game that people are like, "Whoa, I didn't expect to see them here come, the end of the season." But there's really good teams out there. Our region is pretty stacked. I mean, Bountiful is having a great start to their season. Their only loss right now is to Park City. They've got a tough week this week, obviously with Brighton and Olympus both, but that's Bountiful's playing really well. Brighton obviously is doing really well, and Olympus, Nick just continues to pump out really good teams at Olympus, and so our region is, you play through our region and you're ready to go into the state playoffs for sure.
Absolutely. And, you look at the remaining games on your schedule. You got Davis tonight. By the time this publishes, that game will be final. Woods Cross, Viewmont, Skyline, and then Olympus Bountiful to finish the season. So lots still to play for in your region. It could go any way. You do have that advantage on Brighton after beating them last week, but I'm really excited for your region, and then really excited for 5A in general to see how that one
Yeah.
shakes out.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I mean, there's just a lot of good teams, a lot of good talent. I mean, I was super impressed when we played the Wasatch team. It's tough to get a gauge on teams in film. First of all, not all of the film is of ESPN quality, but it's tough to get a gauge. But you see those guys play; they're physical. So they're a team I think could cause some problems down the road for people as well. And like you said, their face off unit was great. I think that was for our face-off kid who's been having a stellar year. That's probably the toughest face-off guy he's had to go against this year. Him and Brighton's, and we didn't. Dallas was injured for Judge, so he didn't have to go against Judge's guy this year so far. But that was a tough one for him.
Absolutely, and we'll have coverage as the season heats up. Obviously, on the Utah Lax Report, I wanted to talk about two things. We said we talked about Maryland.
Okay.
I'm a huge proponent of teams getting out and traveling wherever it is, Colorado, California. You guys though decide to go all the way to Maryland, and look, I've
Yeah.
flown lacrosse teams across the country. It's not easy. Talk about the logistics going into this trip, and then some of the highlights.
Yeah. So, I mean, planning the trip was easy as we have to go through a travel agent. So they booked all the travel for us. So we just kind of had to show up and go. But we flew a red eye flight Tuesday night, and then got to our hotel. We had checked in on some of the rooms the night before. So the boys got to sleep for a few extra hours as we were playing Manchester Valley that night at 6 p.m. So they got some good rest. And headed to Manchester Valley, where ironically we played on grass. And most of our kids were like, "Whoa, grass stadium!" and needless to say, it did cause some problems in the beginning for ground balls, but they got used to it as the game went on. And then, so that was kind of our first day there. Second day, we got to go and, Berkeley, my son is out playing at Towson. So we got to go watch Towson practice, and it was just great to be able to see kind of the speed that they, play and practice with. Everything they do, is at pace. They're doing it at a high level, obviously. And, one of the big key takeaways was how loud their defense is. I mean, we're sitting at the top of Johnny Unitas Stadium, and you can basically, it's like you're standing next to those guys hearing them. So our kids really got to see, hey, when we're talking about communication, that's what we really mean. You got to be loud, not just loud enough for the guy next to you to hear, but loud enough for the stadium to hear you. So that was really exciting. And then Berkeley took all the boys on a tour, took them into the locker room. We got to see the number 2 draft pick, Mikey Weishauer's locker, and the kids were all excited about seeing his locker, knowing who he was. So they got to see that. We went into the weight room. We got to eat lunch in their newly opened athletes dining hall, Doc's Kitchen. So we got to eat in there. Compliments of Coach Nadlin getting us the approval to eat in there. And then after we were done at Towson, we headed into Washington D.C. and it was just great. I mean, some of our kids, I would say probably 7 or 8 of them have never even been on the East Coast, and then probably 10 to 12 had never seen Washington D.C. So it was great. We went into the Air and Space Museum and walked around the National Mall. Got to go see the U.S. Capitol. Saw the White House from afar. They had that thing on lockdown while we were there, but we got to see it from afar. And then we moved on to like the Lincoln Memorial, Washington Memorial. We went and saw the Vietnam Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, World War II. So they got to see all that stuff, and some of those kids had never seen it, and it was just great. And then headed back to hotel. Friday, we played Hereford at noon. So it was kind of an interesting game time, but woke up, got the boys ready, headed to them and played them. They were great. Both teams, Manchester Valley, Hereford, it was just really great experiences. Coaches, athletic directors, teams, just class act. Like if anybody's looking for trips back east, those are two schools I'd put on your radar of going to play. Just really, I mean, they were good teams. And we got an opportunity to, experience it. They gave us the full red carpet at Hereford. We had lunch afterwards with those guys, and they made hamburgers, hot dogs for our boys and coaches and our fans that had traveled out there. So that was great. And then that night we went and watched, two of the classes in the high school ranks, Calvert Hall and McDonough, squared off, and it was just, I think our kids were kind of like, whoa, these guys are good. I mean, they spin the ball quickly. They, get that thing moving, and it's just a little bit different level of high school lacrosse at that with those private schools back in Maryland. So it's fun to go see that. And then Saturday we took them to the Arlington Cemetery. Took a little guided tour of Arlington Cemetery, got to go see the changing of the guard. They did a wreath ceremony while we were there for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which was really cool to see. I think a lot of our kids had no idea, how massive Arlington Cemetery is and how just immaculate they keep those grounds. So it was really neat for those guys to see. And then that night we got to go watch Maryland play Rutgers, and what we thought was going to be a close game, Maryland had other ideas and decided to blow them out. But it was awesome, and compliments of Bubba. We got to take the team down on the field and take some pictures. He set us up with one of their administrators there. I'm not sure what her role was, but she got us down on the field, and we got to go take some pictures on the field. We got to take a picture by the Good Luck Turtle in the tunnel. So it was awesome. Great experience for those guys, and getting to see, some two really good programs play each other, and one just get significantly the better of the other that day. But that was fun. And then Sunday we went to the National Zoo, the Smithsonian Zoo, got to see the pandas. I don't think most of our kids had ever seen pandas in real life. So that was cool to get to see that. And then we flew home Sunday evening. So it was an awesome trip. I mean, we just had such a good time. And look, I'm pretty lucky with the fact that I have some pretty awesome kids that I get to coach, and a lot of great coaches and great parents, and spouses that support our coaches. It just turns into a really good trip, and we're pretty lucky to be able to do things like that and to have good kids that we can feel comfortable going and doing things like that with.
Absolutely. And to your point, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort from people who aren't coaches, parents, admins, that kind of stuff, all that, lining up everything, even the travel agents, all of that. Super
Yeah.
excited. I was following along on Instagram. Whoever was running the Instagram did a killer job at documenting everything. And It was just really cool. I was sitting there going, man, this is a great experience for these kids, something they'll never forget.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the hope right there.
yeah, exactly. Coach McMahon would always talk up at the U. You remember the road trips, not necessarily the results. And
Yep.
and that's something that's kind of stuck with me. And so I think you're capturing it there. Sort of along those lines, what are things that you guys do to culture to build your culture? What are some of your principles? What are some of the things that you guys are teaching the guys?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's around, discipline. We have rules when it comes to being on time to practice. We have rules, if you miss practice, consequences with all your decisions. And then we have a motto that we've been running for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years at Alta, where it's be the one. And, the be the one mantra is like, be the one who cares, be the one who makes the extra play, be the one that, picks up your teammate when he falls down, or be the one that, helps your teammate when they're feeling blue, or be the one that picks up a piece of garbage when we're in the locker room. Like, that's kind of our mantra, is just, be the one that makes a difference today. Whether that's on the field or off the field is irrelevant. We want to be the one that they talk about. And, I get a lot of compliments from teachers at Alta High School that talk about the lacrosse kids, and, that they're good kids. Obviously they're high school kids and they do, some stupid things once in a while, but for the most part, good kids, and we get a lot of compliments from administration, from teachers, and so for me, those are the things that kind of make the difference. Is having those kids that are like really, you know, going to be good, and good kids in the community and good kids in their school, and because in the end, not there's probably not very many of these kids that are going to go on and play, you know, professionally in the PLL, or do things professionally when it comes to lacrosse. And so they've got to they're got to have some things that they fall back on that sports help them build. And that's why we kind of do a lot of focus on every action has a consequence. And we do things like they have to wear black, gray, or red shorts to practice. They got to wear a white, black, or gray shirt underneath their penny. And kids follow that rule, and we try to keep to what our rules are and what our expectations are on a consistent basis.
I love that. And be the one, I think, is great. It can apply to, like you said, all those different examples. You could fit that literally with anything, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I love that saying, be the one. Um, final couple questions for you, Coach.
Okay.
You mentioned your son Berkeley is at Towson.
Yep.
You've got Braxton, who's on a mission in Korea, who's committed to play at Iona, and then you've got Beckham, who's a junior on the squad. Um, tell me about your experiences in the recruiting process. We have a lot of kids who I think could go and play at the next level. What are some pieces of advice you'd give, to either the kids or their parents who are listening, about your experience with the recruiting process?
Yeah, man, the recruiting process is not fun. It's hard. It truthfully is. I mean, Berkeley thought he had an offer. I'll leave the school unnamed, but thought he had an offer from the school. They kind of pulled it from him, and that was heading into the fall of his senior year. And he, he ended up just kind of going into the tournaments his senior year and just, for lack of better term, just balled out and just played phenomenally. And I would say, Braxton did the same thing kind of his senior year, or summer heading into his senior year. Parents always think that, like, oh, I've got to have this, this coach is going to get my kid somewhere, or this coach tells me that they can get my kid recruited. The reality is this: the coaches will help get you seen, they won't help you get recruited. You have to perform when you are in front of those coaches, right? And a coach could send out a million emails and say, hey, this kid's awesome, you got to check him out. They're still going to want to see your kid perform. And I think of the two schools where my kids are going, Towson and Iona. Berkeley played at what is actually Towson's tournament. They run an autumn gold that Utah Summit went to. and Berkeley's an attackman, and he got recruited because they watched how hard he worked writing. They didn't necessarily see him score goals, or I'm sure they saw that too, but they always commented about how that hard they saw him working when he was writing, right? And so, my big key point to kids is like, if you're in those positions and you're in front of those coaches, you have to perform, and it's not just in between the lines. Like, they pay attention when you go off the sideline too. They pay attention how you interact with your teammates. They pay attention how you celebrate your teammates' successes on the field. It's really interesting getting to know some of these college coaches and having conversations with Coach Nadlin and Coach Mushi, who were the ones that recruited Berkeley to Towson, and then Coach Sermon and Coach Kavanaugh at Iona. They pay attention when you don't think they're paying attention. So when you're walking off the field after your team just lost and you're moping, they notice body language, right? They notice how you interact with your coach if you talk back to them. They notice if you aren't a good teammate. Like, they pick up on those things. It's not just scoring goals. It's not just, dodging down and making a good play, or, doing an over the head check. They notice a lot when they're watching a kid, because they want to make sure they're a cultural fit for them, not just, hey, this kid can make good plays now and then.
Yeah, and the culture part you mentioned is a big part of it. Just in my time at the University of Utah, saw that time and time again, where these talented kids are coming in, but then after the visit, the coach are like, man, he was doing this or this or this, and it just isn't part of our culture, and so that's a big part of it too. And I think, to your point,
Yep.
it's up to the kids to go out and show themselves, right?
Yeah,
On
absolutely.
the field and off the field. This is who I am, right? And this
Yep.
is what you're going to get if I come to your school. Yeah, it's very
Yep.
interesting, that whole process. A lot of good tidbits in there. I wanna ask, did you, when Berkeley was looking at Towson, um, did he realize he would become, I think it's the third player from Utah to play at Towson?
I think we knew. Well, yes, I think he did know that. Coach Nadlin actually said that he was going to be the third kid from Utah. It wasn't an unproven ground for Towson, although it's not one they're regularly looking at. But yeah, so he had mentioned that, and I knew. Ironically, the funny thing is, so back when I was coaching club at Utah Select with like Steve Gray and Mike Pappas, we took a team to Virginia, and we got to go watch Towson play Virginia at Klockner Stadium. And the I can't remember the kid's name that was playing on Towson at the time, but he was a Utah kid playing at Towson at the time. And so we got to see him play, and he was like cool. I mean, he was like, talking to all the kids after the game and really cool with them. It was just great to be out there, and then getting to see Berkeley play on Klockner Stadium this year was pretty awesome. So, he got to go out there and help Towson beat Virginia. So it was great to be able to see that.
A full circle moment, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. So it was Matt Mayer. He played at Bingham, and then Kyle Fiat played
Kyle
at
Fiat was the one that we saw. Yeah. So
he
it was
played at
Kyle.
Olympus. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Kyle, I believe he still lives in Maryland.
He still is in Maryland. Yep, he is. He was actually at their alumni event
Okay,
back in the fall. So yeah, he was there.
very cool. And yeah, if you get a chance to go to Klockner, it's a great stadium. It's a grass field, like we've talked about a
Yep.
couple of times. It's a good place to go and watch a lacrosse game. The times I've been, Utah didn't get on the right side of the scoreboard, but one day we'll get them.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Coach, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Hey,
Uh,
thank you.
and anything else you want to chat about or say before we close this one out?
No, hey, just thanks for all you do for the sport of lacrosse in Utah, Tim. I know a lot of people tell you thanks, but I want to make sure I'm one of those guys that tells you thanks for all that you do. The lacrosse community is an awesome community. I got to
Yeah.
experience that firsthand back in October with my injury, and just seeing the love and outpouring from the lacrosse community. So if you're part of it, stay a part of it, because it's a special one to be a part of. That's for sure.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why I'm still here all these
Yeah.
all these years later. I'm not quite well, I guess I guess I am in that 25-year mark because I graduated in 2003, so I played
Yep. So you're
lacrosse.
there.
I'm there, and I'm starting to feel it too. To be honest with you, Coach,
Yeah, it catches up with you quick, doesn't it?
it does. It does. No, I appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for coming on, and
Hey, thank you.
I suspect we'll see you and the Hawks down the road.
I hope so. Thank you.